Good God, let's eat!
So Rowe, man, Ballaz In Da Middle. We're back in his house, back in those stars. First one for 2025.
Yes, indeed. It's been a minute.
It sure has. But today we have our special guest with us today, man. We have Scott Rowe, who is the under-19s GB head coach. But before I go there,
Oh, I thought you were going to miss it this time.
come on now,
Pay
pay the bills.
Yeah, we've got to pay the bills, man. We got to pay the bills. So please, don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, because obviously that helps the channel grow. So when that notification comes out, just please watch it, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, as I would say, X. And did I forget one? No, I didn't. But yes, so like I said, just help the channel grow by following us. And back to the man himself,
Okay.
Mr. Hutchie Hutch.
So we have Mr. Scott Rowe with us. This player during the 90s and noughties is a double Euro Bowl winner, Euro Cup winner, playing multiple years in the British American football leagues with the London Olympians. Played semi-professional football as well in Europe. We have defensive back and, like I said before, current under-19s Great Britain head coach, Mr. Scott Rowe.
Yay!
How you doing, man? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm very well.
We really appreciate you coming back, man, on the set with us and chopping it up again, man, because like I said before, when we first did it, we just didn't get that quality, man, because of all the background noise, etc.
Yeah. It's okay.
But where we want to go, man, we're going to take it right back, man. We'll take it back to, how did you fall up into American football?
Well, I guess going back right to the start, and we spoke the other day, and there were some similarities in our kind of journey. I guess, I'll start right at the very beginning. I was actually born in the States. I was born in New York City.
So that's something I never know.
I never knew that.
I was born in New York City because my mum's English and she was working out there. Met my dad, had me. But we came back home when I was very young, so I was a babe when I came back home.
Yeah.
And I guess I did all the competitive sports things at school. Like, I was into my rugby. That was my first big kind of I was really into rugby. And I'd always had an inkling about American football because that had been something which, I kind of stayed in contact with my cousins and that in the States. And growing up, it's like, all the razzmatazz and all the glamour and that. I watched it on Channel 4, of course, like everyone did back in the day. And, just kind of saw an advert and went down to Sutcliffe Park in Kidbrooke, where the Kent Rams were practicing. And literally from day one, day one, I was hooked. That was it. There was nothing. No, well, I played other sports still, but American football became my thing, So, that's it really. Fell into that. That started off as being like two-touch. Although, the first time I went down to the Rams, and for about 6 months afterwards, we played full contact with no pads, of course. Like, no one had pads, but it was a full contact, and it was carnage. You learn to be physical for sure.
And that was without helmets and shoulder pads, right?
Absolutely, yeah. That was just in your gear, and that was like, and that was a whole day. There wasn't like, oh, we're gonna have a 2-hour practice. That was like from like midday until it got dark,
I get it. Those were just days when you just had everything from here down was fine. So you had hip pads, your shoulder pads. You had hip pads, your knee pads, and you had the pants. But from here up, it was just the top, and that was it.
Yep.
That was it.
Yeah, the old jerseys from old Gridiron Sports up on Earls Court Road, I think, wasn't it? It was in Earls Court anyway, Warwick Road or something like that.
I remember.
But you're right. Yeah, all the lower gear. and your shirt, and that was it. And you just rolled.
That's not how I
with it.
started.
Just roll with it.
But yeah, but that's rough.
We had some wars, man.
Yeah,
At Stonebridge Park.
those were some good games, you know. And it
Man.
went back and forth as well, wasn't it? It was very much a back and
It's
forth
like below
rivalry.
freezing on G1, 1G like AstroTurf, more sand on there.
No padding.
No padding at all. It was softer playing on concrete.
Yep, you're right.
Those
It
are the
was.
days,
It was.
man.
But
I think of yourself. I think of Stephon Healy,
that's right. Mark Lawrence.
Mark Lawrence. Who was the QB? Who's the other QB again?
who was it?
Kevin.
Oh, Kevin
something.
Hodges. Kevin Hodges. Yep.
You see what I'm saying? So then, what happened after that? I mean, how did you get yourself affiliated to the mighty London Olympians? How did you get affiliated to them?
Yeah, well, after, spent my whole junior time, so from about, I was, I guess 15 when I started. So I did 4 years with the Rams, and also I spent a year with the Olympians junior program. Mm-hmm. So that's how I first became, like, sort of involved with the Olympians. And it just seemed like a natural progression. Like, when I hit 18, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to play football. And it seemed natural to me to go and play for the Olympians. And that's what happened. Basically, I rocked up as an 18-year-old, and obviously back then, the Olympians and the Ravens, and that was a big rivalry. And yeah, it naturally happened, and suddenly found myself with sort of big men, big players. You know what I mean? These are players that I'd seen at Crystal Palace when I'd gone there to watch games. Like your Bob Deans and your Bowler. And all those guys.
You had thousands in the crowds back then, right?
Yeah, and that's what I mean. A Saturday night game at Crystal Palace. And you sat up there and I'd watch these guys and I'd be like, oh man, this is like proper football. Like,
but what made you decide to go to the Olympians and not the mighty Ravens at the time?
You know what?
It's massive rivalry.
South, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of like a geography thing, really. I've always been South London,
right.
The Ravens I think back then played over in Richmond Way, didn't they, or something?
Richmond,
And I know you practiced in Hyde Park, didn't you? Well,
that's originally where it's practiced.
That's right.
And then they went to Richmond. After.
Yeah. So it was just geographically as a young man, you're not as au fait with travelling as you are when you get older. So for me, it just seemed like a natural progression because it was not too far from me in South London.
So both of y'all were at the Olympics before I got there.
Yeah.
Right? Both of you were there.
I think I came just before you.
I got there 94.
Yeah. So.
Let's draw a line in the sand. Let's say 1993 was that year you guys started balling together. I mean, was you both? Obviously, you were playing corner, you were playing strong, or was you playing free? I mean, if you guys can remember back, what was that?
I think I was playing strong.
What was that cohesion like,
so.
man? I mean, yeah.
I think we developed quite a good chemistry there on our side and that. We kind of
we
like
both played the same side.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I think that worked quite well. I think that's what I mean.
Yeah, you knew I could rely on. I could rely on him.
Yeah.
Not saying that. The weakness was the backside, to be fair. Be honest, because they kept on flipping the backside of the.
So who played free safeties? Is
Derek Brown.
Derek Brown.
Derek Brown.
Yes, of course. Yes.
That's
Derek.
it. Derek Brown.
Derek. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So let me work this out now. So where does the part of your narrative and your sporting career go into Power 5 school in the States, at Nichols State, NCAA, where does that fit in your past?
Well, I was really, really lucky, and I do count my blessings on this because I was really lucky. When I came to the Olympians as an 18-year-old, joined the senior team and that, it was around the same time I think that Coach Cox had come down, Coach Andy Cox, R.I.P., great coach, fantastic man. And he'd arrived as well, and he was, in a way, I think, trying to changing the culture a bit of the Olympians. Olympians always been a bit like, maybe a bit ill-disciplined, perhaps, is that a good word to use? And I think Coach Cox came in and he wasn't interested in anything other than how you played football, and how you played. And he didn't care who you were or reputations. I think he didn't care about reputations. And back then, I think British football was very much like, sort of, oh, I'm so-and-so, so, hey, I'm playing, you know what I mean? And it was a bit like that. So I was really lucky that Coach Cox was there when I arrived. He believed in me. He told me he believed in me and that, and gave me confidence. Yeah, definitely.
Definitely got better.
Yeah, but yeah, that was my big influence. And obviously, Coach Cox had connections out at Nichols State and various other schools, but that's where he was at the time when I was there. And he started talking to me, I think probably the end of my first year there, my first year with the Olympians, talking about, you know, hey, have you thought about going to school? Because I was 18, coming to 19 then. And yeah, we just, you know, got to talking about it. And it was something obviously that I kind of like, by that point, I kind of dreamed about, you know, wanted to do that. And yeah, it just sort of, it was a quite slow process. But by the end of the 92 season, which was my second year with the Olympian seniors, I was kind of really organised and I had my sort of grades and I'd taken the SAT and all that.
Right.
So I was kind of ready to go. And I went out there in January of 93 out to Louisiana. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So that must have been a rabbit in the headlights
Man,
experience.
yeah.
But that's what people want to hear about. We want to hear, because look, you going to play like in an NCAA Power 5 school, I mean in D1, you know, going to play at that level back then was just unheard of. I mean,
especially as an English player.
There's pathways today that can kind of lead you to that, but not many. Yeah. But doing it like what? Early 90s. Yeah. You were probably one of the first to do that. Yeah. In our era, and in our era anyway. Just talk us through what that experience was like for you.
Well, you summed it up just by saying deer in headlights, because it really was. Now, I thought here that I was, obviously, I had confidence in myself, and I knew I was a good player, okay? Yeah. And I thought I was quite a good athlete, okay? I got out to the States now, and you get out there, and I think for me it was actually easier because I went out there for spring practice, you know what I mean? So I had a few months to assimilate to school and stuff and getting to know like how it all kind of worked. But football was another matter. It was such an eye opener to the level of what I'd need to get to. Just the first, you know, because we were going through like workouts, and the coach at the time actually called it like phase 2, and it was like, you know, gym workouts. Obviously, you got into the habit of lifting weights. I'd never really lifted weights properly over here. Never had. I just never really got into it. I'd had, you know, some dumbbells at home, and you know, I did a little bit of running and all that. So I kept myself fit, but not to the level that I needed to.
Not American football fit.
Athlete fit.
Exactly. So that was an awakening because, oh man, it was hard. I mean, it was like just the physical exercise that you were doing and the intensity of it and the non-stopness of it. You know, it was just really, really tough, but also really good because I knew, because obviously the season wasn't until, you know, August, the fall. It was good to have that grounding to it because I felt like I was prepared a little bit, and I'd had like, you know, 8 months to sort of assimilate myself, if you like, into what I needed to do. And obviously I saw a lot of gains because obviously from someone who's not lifted before, you know yourselves from lifting weights, you know, you kind of suddenly you go from, hold on a minute, I'm getting really strong and I'm getting really defined really quickly here because, you know, but then of course you hit that point where
in
you're...
that environment though.
Yeah.
In that environment.
Yeah. But it was tough as well because, I mean, I think part of it was getting used to the culture because it was Louisiana. We're talking deep south, right? We're talking 70 miles southwest of New Orleans, right? So we're talking right down in the bayou, okay? Not the most kind of
culture.
Not the most worldly of places, if you know what I mean.
Backward.
Quite isolated, and I think being a kid of mixed race background, coming from South London, where obviously you have every creed, colour, you know, race under the sun, right? And all my friends back home here were like, you know, of all different races, okay? I think what shocked me a little, well, not shocked me, what surprised me, shocked as well probably, was the kind of definition there was on kind of racial.
But it's clear as day though, wasn't it? It wasn't like they were trying to hide it. It was so plain.
Yeah.
You couldn't miss it.
Plain in your face.
Yeah, and it wasn't so much of, you know, I know people running around, you know, calling people this and that and this and that and that, but it was very much defined. Like just as an example, you go into the school cafeteria sort of thing, right? Big, massive cafeteria, right? You will have black kids on one side, black students on one side, okay, white students on the other. Very, very little mixing, and the only sort of groups that did mix were the athletes. Okay? So you had the football team sort of thing, and you had like the basketball team and the women's softball team and stuff like that. So that all kind of was it was such a weird environment. Come from somewhere where you didn't really
behave like that.
You didn't really notice that because
you didn't,
because it was your norm. Yeah, very multicultural here in London. And over there it was
very, very different.
Very well. I hear that. And did that have an impact on your progression though? And I guess it didn't because I think
Sports are
I think
different.
I've answered my own question because he's saying that
sports is completely different. There's no
Colour goes
when it
away.
comes to sport.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never would have guessed Scott would have experienced something like that. But what I wanted to know,
because he's looking at himself as. I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong. His skin complexion would have been off compared to someone from Louisiana.
It was very weird because I got some very weird questions, right? Okay, because it would be like, oh, it's like very inquisitive but very direct. Like, are you black? Right, and it would be like, I'm mixed race. My father's from Dominican Republic. My mum's English. So it was almost like a constant explaining of that. And the only thing I would say in Louisiana was, you do have like a lot of Creole sort of people, right? So there is a bit of mixing, and there's a whole sort of almost subculture, if you like, of like Creole peoples who are sort of mixed race people, basically. And it's but it again, that was still a weird experience to being asked, like on many, many occasions, so are you black or what? Are you black or, and it's just weird. And I think, but once it was explained to people or just said, well, this is the situation. Like, oh, okay. And it was okay. I never really directly kind of would say this was a problem or, it was just odd for me because coming from such a multicultural background.
Sorry.
Go for it.
It might have been different if he went in not as an athlete. He might have hit those barriers. If he just went in as a normal student,
Agreed.
he probably would have come across those barriers. But as we were just saying, coming in as an athlete, there's none of that whatsoever at all. They don't even see that. They're just playing, and they would go to war for you. That's the wickedest thing.
I hear that. So the question I was just going to ask, I actually forgot. But just carrying on with this though, because it is really interesting. So I just want to fast track a little bit. You got to the point now where you've done like the summer camps. You're now in regular season. Okay, where is Scott positioned? Come first game of the year. Where is Scott positioned? Is Scott playing DB? Is Scott playing scout team? What is Scott doing?
Yeah, I was on the scout team. And a weird thing for me, right? This is the weirdest thing is, so all through like phase 2, like I said, the spring period, right? I'm going into spring practice, okay? I'm like, okay, well, I'm a DB. They know I'm a DB sort of thing and that. First, day before spring practice starts, they post a, sort of a depth chart, right? In the athletic facility. So I'm like, I go down there with everyone else. I'm like, okay, I'm not on the DB list, right? And we ran a certain type of offense, and there was a wing back in there, right? Okay, and I looked, and I was on the wing back list, and I'm like, I haven't done any wing back training. I haven't, I played a little bit of receiver at juniors and stuff like that.
That's on the offense. But,
yeah, completely different. And I was like, okay. So that day actually, I went out with a couple of the other players, sort of thing, and practiced all the wing back routes and stuff like that, because and it was there was a lot of blocking because we were very much a run first offense sort of thing. So the wing had certain pass routes, but it was more a case of blocking. So I had to learn how to and they wanted you to really come after and cut like ends and like outside backers and stuff. So that was a big transition. So for the first half of spring practice, they had me at wing back, okay? And I thought I did okay, all right? But a coach asked me, I think like halfway through spring practice or something, you want to, I said, I'd love to go back to play some corner. And our starting corner got injured. He blew out his ACL on like the second day of spring practice. And so that was a really big thing because he was like an all-conference player. So I knew there were little things. I had a couple other injuries. And I kind of like worked my way around to saying, oh, can I, maybe I'll go back to DB. And they moved back to DB for the second half of spring practice, and I did well. I thought I did well. I rose up the depth chart to like I think I got to third string at one point, sort of thing, as a freshman, of course. So I'm doing all this as a true freshman. So and then come August now. Obviously, I'm still learning my stuff. So I'm on the scout team, and we called ourselves the Silver Bullets because we had like these silver jerseys that they had the scout team in, and it was really good because we got like a real, kind of a real affinity. You develop a group mentality as the Silver Bullets, and you're trying to give your best every time to make the offense to make them better.
Give them a look, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a real kind of really good kind of vibe and atmosphere to the Silver Bullets, and I still got my jersey. I think from the sideline, like a number 5, like silver bullet jersey, and I was really happy about that, So we hit the season. We didn't have a very good team that year. I think we ended up going like 3-8 or 3-9 or something like that. Right, it wasn't great, but I still remember now one of my proudest moments, and it's still a very proud moment for me, is actually when I was told I was dressing for like the first game sort of thing. So our first 2 games were on the road, and I didn't go on the travelling squad. I wasn't on the bus. But my first time I stepped on the field was the third game of the season against Southeast Louisiana.
And what did you step on the field as? Corner?
I didn't play corner that game. I just played safety. I played special teams.
Special teams, yeah.
So I was on the punt team and I was on the kickoff team, sort of thing. So that was my first reps ever in football.
How many years were you at Nichols?
I was out 2 seasons.
2 seasons.
2 seasons, yeah. So the '93 season and the '94 season. Yeah.
Right. Did you experience, right? Because in my version of what you're talking about is me playing with the London Monarchs at the Atlanta Falcons facility at their practice grounds. All right, and that was my first experience of playing in the States in that environment. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
And it felt intimidating initially at first, because when I walked out, it was really like, what the hell have I got myself into? Because I looked at the groups, you looked at the wide receiver groups, you looked at the DB groups, you looked at the linebacking group, you looked at all these units, you looked at the QBs are 6'5", 6'6", and all this stuff was initially intimidating.
Yeah.
And once I got out there and I got my first hit, and I was just like part of the process with the running backs, because we were 9 deep.
Of course,
well.
of course, yeah.
Me being number 11.
Yeah.
And as I got through the process, it was starting to get a bit better. But did you ever experience, because I experienced this, and I think a lot of European players experience this, a level of prejudice? You not being American, so because you're not American, you are classed as a second-class citizen within the team, because you weren't born there, etc. That's
yes is the answer. And the strangest thing, I guess, that same tip is very much like I remember being called into the head coach's office, right, at the end of the season, end of the 93 season. So at the end of the season, all players had a 1-to-1 with the head coach sort of thing, okay? Yeah. And I kind of got called in there, and he sat me down and he said, yeah, so when you first came around, you'd obviously been briefed a little bit, because as a practice squad player, you don't really, a scout team player rather, you don't have an awful lot of interaction with the head coach. You just don't. It's like it's levels, isn't it, sort of thing, and you don't.
Hierarchy, innit?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he's obviously been briefed a little bit. So he had a little note in front of him, and he was like, "Oh, so you came to, and we put you at wing back in the spring, and you requested to move to DB." And I said, "Yeah, I just felt more comfortable there. That's what I played back in the back home." And he asked me a little bit about home, and he was quite interested, sort of thing. And he said, "Well, I have to be honest, Scott. When you first came, didn't think you'd be sticking with us, or you'd be able to play for us." And I'd only ever played special teams that season, just in our home games. And he said, but you've really come along, and you've really shown us something. And I think I think there's definitely a future for you in this program. And by that time I was like 19, I think, or 20. I might even have been 20 by then. But he was like, that made me so proud, because it uplifted me. But it was like, I think he didn't think I'd be able to contribute, because he thought all English players were kickers. That's what I remember saying. Right. Them people saying to me when I went there, they were like, "Oh, you're a kicker." Everyone asked me, because Tony Easton was out there from the Olympians, because he'd been out. He's a guy who played receiver at the Olympians.
I remember hearing that guy.
Yeah, and he'd been out at a junior college in Kansas, I think, and then had transferred to Nichols because Andy Cox was there. Yeah. So everyone asked me when I sort of got there, and Tony was really good to me. He sort of, introduced me to people and stuff. But they'd be like, "Oh, so you're English? You're here to play football? You're a kicker?" sort of thing. And I'm like, "No, I'm not a kicker." So everyone assumed I was a kicker because I was English. Yeah. And I'm like, "No, I play corner. I'm a DB." But yes, in that respect, I think there wasn't that expectation of me because I was English, and they kind of thought that, well, you're not going to be able to play here at a position, you know, it's but that's kind of the that's my sort of story around that, because that's why I did feel that, you know, I was just looked as an English player, and like they didn't think I was going to amount to anything. But I think I did enough in practice and contributed enough on specials, and you know, as part of a very good scout team, to actually, you know, sort of be considered, you know, as, oh, he could play here, you know what I mean? And which I was very proud of at the time, because, you know, you want that, you kind of bigged you up a little bit. So yeah, but yeah.
In the US, I mean, in the US, even up until Christmas just gone, right? I was out in New York, and I was like in a hotel in a bar watching a game. I started talking to some people, you know, like you do. You know what I mean, while they're all watching the game. And they said, "Oh, you're English," sort of thing. And I said, "Oh, yeah, yeah." And I just went straight to the jugular. I said, "Yeah, I used to play NFL, Europe, blah blah blah." "Oh, you're English," sort of thing. So it's that same knee jerk. People in America don't really think that the sport is played outside of the 50 states.
No, not without a doubt.
Yeah.
They think everything that happens within the US, that's it. It don't go no further than that.
So, a question I want to ask you about is this: if you had the opportunity to explain to today's prospects that can probably go over to a Power 5 school or D2 school and you know, live out their dream of studying and playing football, what are the top 3 things that you would advise them off the back of your experience? Because I can't see it's changed that much, as in from the 90s to now.
No.
I mean, obviously the game has slightly changed,
Yeah.
but the operations around it and the hard work and the expectations, they're still going to be the same, right?
Yeah. The core fundamentals, I think, stay the same. I mean, you know, football's football. They've been playing it for 100 years or whatever, and you know, it stays the same. And I think so. The 3 things I would always tell someone is prepare your body for football, okay? Because too many people maybe neglect some things. I mean, you know, it's like when you go to the gym, a lot of people like to work, you know, the biceps and all that, look good and look good like that, you know. But do your core work. You got to work your legs. You got to do those big core, powerful muscles which are going to drive you. Whichever position you play in football, that's gonna help you. You've got to do that. You know, the same thing with like things like flexibility. I always tell the young players we get under 19s is like, you know, do your stretching. You know what I mean? Be flexible, because obviously it helps you with so many ways, and also can help you to avoid injury if you're a bit more pliable, a bit more flexible 100%. And stuff. So
I wish I knew that when I was 100%.
I wish I did too, and I neglected that. I was never someone that really concentrated on that.
I was someone who always stretched.
Yeah, I was always
stretched.
I knew lifting, but it weren't about no stretching. It was about just raw lifting, getting stronger. That was it. It weren't nothing. That's why I like the fact that the way I train now, the functional fitness, the CrossFit stuff, that kind of work. You know, that kind of workout is stretching. You know, your core, your endurance, all of that it built into one. That's why you find so many more players doing those kind of styles of workout now, because you know it helps them within the game.
Yeah, definitely. So that's something I always tell our players: prepare your body for football, because football is not like. It's not a contact sport. It's a collision sport, and you have to be able to, to take a hit as well. You know, you have to be able to, you're going to get. Everyone gets laced. I don't care how big and strong you are. Okay, everyone gets put on the ground, and you've got to be able to be I'll jump up and do that. So prepare your body for football. So develop that. The second thing, and this is a really key thing actually. And as soon as you started talking about that, what would I recommend? You've got to study, okay? One of the things that became so clearly obvious to me, right, when I was out at Nichols, was there are so many talented players, right, who on the field, absolutely amazing, right, okay, and talent level could go to the NFL, right? But what they don't do is they don't go to class, and they drop out because they wouldn't be maintaining their GPA. And it's like, I can't imagine. I'm not the most physically gifted guy. I'm not 6'6", 280, right, okay? But we had guys who I thought to myself, these guys are amazing athletes, right? Wish I had all that. But these guys, they'd be with us for a semester, okay, and then you wouldn't see them. And you talk to someone like, and they'd be like, oh, what happened to David or something? And they'd be like, oh no, he had to drop out. He's coming back next semester maybe if he can get his grades up again. And I'm like, dude, of all you've got to, the benefits open up to you. Just go to class, and it wouldn't be a case of going to class and not doing that. They just won't go to class.
And that's I don't know if it was it was but same. When I went there, if you show up to class, it's a C.
That's yes.
Oh yes, if you show up to class, you get a C.
And you've got to put that work in.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
I think these days, I think a lot of the players, because I think back, and one of the things I did when I was out at Nichols, I thought about people I played with back here at home, sort of thing, and sort of how they would be. And I always kind of thought, my things about Richard Dunkley, for example, right, who I had massive admiration for, right, a great back, and I love being around Richard. Spent a year with him in Spain playing in Madrid, and I kind of thought that you've got to be able to do all the little things that you required to do as a student athlete, because it's tiring, right? I mean, probably the sole biggest thing I had to get used to was how tired I was all the time. Okay, because you get up and you do your classes, because you have to schedule early classes, because obviously you've got practice in the afternoons and film or study hall in the evenings. So you're getting up early to go to you have to go to breakfast. You get marked in at breakfast. So you have to commit yourself to a certain level of dedication. You've got to dedicate yourself
and
to
get
it.
yourself disciplined to do that
that's it.
constantly.
Discipline. You have to do that, and as someone who wasn't the most athletically gifted, I had to do that. I had to go make sure I went to my 6 a.m. lift, lift sessions and stuff. You have to do it, and there are days when you wake up and you really don't want to go. You're like, oh, I'm so tired, I don't want to go. But you have to force yourself to go, because you knew there was you had to keep your eyes focused on the goal, on the end goal. And I think studying is a massive part of it. Not just on the football side of things. You don't need to just study your playbook. You have to know your playbook, but you also have to understand, if you're going out to a school, a college, anywhere, you have to put the work in. There's no shortcuts to it. There's no thinking, oh yeah, but I run a 4-4.
I don't care.
It doesn't matter if there are dozens of kids out there that are running 4-4s too, exactly. And you know what? They're reading their playbooks, or they know what they're doing on a particular route. Yeah. If you don't put the work in, you're never going to be able to get to the level you think you want to get to.
What's the third?
Well, the third one, I was thinking that as I was talking. I was like, I already have a third. But I think it's I think probably it's a combination of both of those, but also it's the kind of it's the discipline, right, of doing that. We mentioned that in the second one as well. But I think football's such a disciplined sport, okay, and the fate of 10 other players on the field can hinge on whether your left tackle makes that block, or your receiver, sort of makes his break at the right point. Yeah. So many things come back to discipline and repetition. So, and you've got to really want it. So desire and discipline in doing those things. I think you really have to kind of do that. And that's what we kind of stress at we'll get onto this, but GB under 19, we kind of stress to the young players, because some of them think they've kind of, it's like, oh yeah, but I'm this, I can catch and I can run and I can do this and that. It's like, but can you do that on a consistent basis? And can you fight through the hard things? Like, one of the things is fighting through injury and stuff, like, because we're all going to get banged up at time, okay? You've got to be able to maintain your discipline through any sort of injuries you might have. Like, I sprained my knee in the spring at Nichols, my second spring there, and it's just a sprain, but my knee was like double the size, it was like a big balloon, and so I missed practice for like about 5 days or 4 days of practice, because it just wouldn't go down, sort of thing. And it's really hard, because you still got to maintain being part of what you're doing, but you can't actually participate. So that's hard, because you're just watching practice. So you've got to be able to... the mental side of things is huge, and that's what I think that nowadays the mental side of anything is very challenging. I think young people today, young men in particular in our sport, have a real challenge in... on the mental side of things, and kind of keeping all the distractions away from what you're focused on. So
there's way more distractions nowadays than there was when we were playing. For sure.
Well, for one, we weren't playing in a digital age.
Yeah.
We were playing.
Social media wasn't a thing, was it?
Before social media, we were playing at a time when every other day, I guess after school you'd probably be out, right? On your bike or playing football.
You'd be out before.
That's all like.
Same thing on the weekends, but it's completely different.
Massively.
But I just want to mention about your nickel state, right? That thanks for sharing us with that. That your after your journey, should I say, because that journey isn't really replicated here in this country because players, it's a minimal amount of players that actually get the opportunity to do that. Yeah, we've got NFL Academy, and that's a completely different other subject to do that. But regards to pathways, for what you did back then, with regards to today, there still isn't many. You know, it's still not advertised really well. Even though there are pathways to go and do that, it's still advertised really well, and it's a damn shame. It really is a damn shame. Yeah. But just moving on in your career, you had a successful career. You know, you won championships, Brit Bowl championships, Euro Bowl championships, and then you transitioned into coaching. Yeah. So just give us a high level spot. Let's shine a light on that, and let's see if you can tell us how you got from your first coaching role to where you are.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that I was one of those players who I always felt I'd become a coach, just because I thought about the game a lot. You know, I always, in my playing days, I kind of transitioned from being a corner in my early days to playing safety, having a much more wider view of the field, and now all of a sudden you go from your little nice little box segment, a corner, and then all of a sudden you're out there and you're like, oh man, there's a lot to see here. There's a lot to read. So I always kind of felt that I was quite a mental sort of player in terms of, you know, being able to look at things and read things and do that. So I always knew that once I decided to finish playing, I was going to go into coaching. So obviously, you know, familiarity with the Olympians. I finished my career in 2005, playing career. So my last game was the 2005 Brit Bowl, where we came back, had a comeback victory over the Knights, who were up at half the Farnham PA Knights at the time. We came back like from 2 scores down, I think, at half time, and came back and won that final. So that was my last game, and it's good to go out on a high. That was my last ever game. So immediately that next year, I spoke to the coaches down. I said, look, I want to transition to coaching. They knew that, and I coached DBs down there for that next season. So that was 2006.
Did you? Right, I got to press pause on this bit because I struggled with this bit.
Okay.
So you're saying that 2005, you retired.
Yes.
And then you went straight into coaching.
I did.
Coaching DVs.
Yes.
Was there no temptation to go back and play as a player coach?
You know, to be honest with you, no, right? No, there wasn't. I'd made that decision.
He had his why. He already had his why. Well, we didn't. Well, I didn't anyway.
I just knew that it was time to stop playing for me personally. And, you know, I had a new job, a new career kind of thing that had, you know, come up that time. That I find that was very difficult to combine that with playing football and giving what I'd always given before. Because I'd always based my life around football, if you like, because I'd kind of like, you know, gone and played abroad sort of thing, and obviously had kind of part-time sort of jobs, temporary jobs, if you like, over here in the meantime. So I'd spend 6 months in Germany, for example, and then have 6 months working here and stuff. But I decided, bang, I'm done. And the thing is as well, I didn't want to be one of those players that, you know, retired one year, all right, okay, and then sort of came back halfway through the next year, and then retired again, and then came back a year. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to, you know, sort of like focus on, you know, I wanted to focus on being the best player I was as a player. So I wanted to then focus on becoming the best coach I could be, all right? So the only thing I will say, well, no, it's not the only thing, but the big thing I will say that I did find difficult was I'd be on the sidelines looking at people playing the position I played, right? And I couldn't, in my head, I couldn't understand, why can't they see that? Why are they doing that? Why are they going there? Didn't they know the receiver was going to break here? What, you know, and that was the hardest thing. And I think I will hold my hands up and say in my early days of coaching, I was quite animated because I could not understand why they weren't doing what I would have done or what I thought they should be seeing. And that's something I think you learn as a coach.
That's vision and knowledge. That's like 10, 15 years of vision and knowledge that you're expecting a player with 2 or 3 years experience in regards to where you've been. Nickel State, played in Europe, and then you expect them to do the same thing. I get it.
Yeah. But I really did. I found that the most difficult thing though, because I literally was like inside. I was like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't jump that. So I was probably a little harsh on the players back then. To be honest, probably owed them a bit of an apology because I was like, you've got to be able to see that. And I was like, well, did I see that when I first started playing? I probably didn't. You know what I mean? But that's something which 10 years, 12 years into my career, I did see because I'd seen it a million times. So yeah, but yeah, so straight into coaching.
So I want to know that path, man. How do you navigate through to being the head coach of the under-19s Great Britain program?
So I've always had great pride in representing GB. Right, I did it as a junior player. I was lucky enough to go out to Milwaukee as part of the GB Crusaders. They were back then, as a sort of, I think I was 19 or 18 that time, and that was an experience that stayed with me. Had a great week in like Wisconsin. Went to like a Packers game. Went to a University of Wisconsin game. Did some great stuff, right? So loved that sort of thing. And I always felt that and we played against the American Air Force bases here. Right. So your Lakenheath and your Woodbridge, I think it was, or something. We played some games, and I'd love representing my country, right? And obviously I did it at senior level as well, which I'd always enjoyed our trips, when we were on, international duty. I loved all that. So I kind of got the opportunity to coach GB through Rick, actually, because obviously he was the head coach at the Olympians when I sort of stopped playing and started coaching. And I said, I'd love to get involved as a GA type coach in the setup. And I've always loved special teams, always loved playing special teams, always kind of thought it's a real something that's really undervalued and undercoached a little bit in this country. It's kind of like, oh well, yeah, we'll just let's get 11 people out there and just kick the ball away, punt the ball away. And I've always seen opportunities in special teams to make differences in games. So yeah, I got aboard as a GA on the men's program back in I think 2007 or something like that, and kind of flirted around with that for a couple of years. But then I knew that I kind of wanted to coach. I've always felt that giving back to the game it does resonate with me. Not in any sort of like, I'm a saint, I'm going to give back to the game, but it's like, hey, you know what? As a young player, what would I have liked to have been coached up in? What would I have liked my coach back in the day to, sort of do for me? And I kind of felt, I like coaching young players because they're a bit more of a blank canvas, if you like. I mean, I think a lot of senior players in British football are very much like, I've played for 10 years, you can't teach me anything. I always play like this, and it's like, they're very set in their ways. I think with young players, the most sort of refreshing thing is that they are there to be taught. And once you see someone who comes to you quite raw, right, but has got some talent, and then you have 6 months with them or whatever in a program, and you can then churn out something that, boy, is a kind of on the way to being a finished product. I think that's really good to see. So after a few years with the sort of adult program, I contacted the head coach at the time, I think it was Steve Rains of the GB Under-19 program. And this was back in I think probably 2011 or something like that. And yeah, came aboard on his staff as a special teams coordinator. And then when he stepped away, Damien Anderson took over. And obviously I'm very good friends with Damien. He's been a friend of mine from, way back in.
We all ball together, man.
Yeah, exactly. Another sort of from that era. Yeah. So Damien took over. I was appointed DC sort of thing. So I was DC under him for about 4 years, 4 years, I think. But again, I don't think I thought we did a really good job. Damien's a good coach. I mean, he's been coaching now for probably the same length of time that I am. But I don't think he received the support he should have had. And I don't think it's a kind of replicating thing, but I don't think he received the support he should have had. And we didn't invest in our young players. So the program then took a really big break from 2015 through to I think 2018, I think, when... Wow. Yeah, I mean, it was like a 3-year period where there was no...
Under-19s.
No under-19s national program. And it was just like, well, what are we doing? And, I don't... To this day, I can't really think why there was nothing in the meantime that no one said, hey, when are we going to get the under-19 program? There's definitely demand for it, which we can come on to when I talk to you about what our program's doing at the moment. And then... I stayed involved in the program. I was quite happy to, when they restarted it, Jason Henry was the head coach, who was
Oh, yeah.
the Blitz, obviously long-time Blitz Juniors head coach. And he took over, and under him, I just started off as a DB coach. I just went back to basics and said, you know what, I'm happy to not take on the responsibilities being a DC. Let me go back and work with a DB group and try and make these kids better. You know, so I had a really good DB group for a couple of years. And then, you know, again, I kind of came back again as in another incarnation once Jason Henry stopped doing it. Neil McMaster, Nelly, took over, and I remained on the staff as the DC. I think I was a DC then, and yeah, I just, you know, when he stepped away, the opportunity came up to become the interim head coach back in, this would have been, gosh, just after COVID, so the end of 2021. Yeah, the end of 2021. We got the program back on its feet because obviously it'd been a 2-year hiatus because of COVID. And yeah, I kind of just rolled with it and just have kept on doing it. And I've had that, you know, I think the real thing that I like about it is that I kind of get to run it the way that I think it should be run, as in the program itself, and, you know, get the coaches on board and, you know, have the correct messaging that I think should be going through the program, you know. So I've done that now for what, three and a bit years.
3 and a bit years.
So yeah, as head coach.
Okay, so I don't know if you've seen our podcast that we was invited by Jason Scott. Yeah. He's the head coach of the national men's team. And so we went up to Nottingham University, should I say, to observe a practice. And, you know, he asked us, you know, he invited us up there. I said, you know, give us your feedback, tell us what you see, etc. And I said, all right, okay, we'll make a couple of podcasts out of this. So, one thing that what really stuck out for me and what we identified was the fact that, you know, Jason seemed to feel that he had the best players there. Okay, and the way I look at it is like this: there was use cases, right, after that practice at the games where there were players that were in the stands not playing the game. Okay. And I said to myself, well, you know, I kind of like thought to myself, well, why are you guys in the stands? You guys were at practice. You were at Nottingham, you were practicing, you were balling with everyone else, you're not playing. Then get to find out that the players have to pay a subscription to play for the GB national team. Why? Because there's not enough funding to support the players. So the players have to pay to play. Okay? Now, there's a lot of challenges around that straight away. Okay? We all played GB. And they found a way for us. They found a way for us. Because when we were balling, they wanted the best 11 or the best 22 defensive players and the best 22 offensive players from Great Britain to be on that sideline. Yeah. Okay. And when I asked Jason, I said, "Do you feel like you've got the best players here?" He said, "Yes." Well, he didn't. Okay. You have the best players, or a percentage of the best players in this country. They're playing abroad. They're doing exactly what we did when we were playing back in the day. After you finish playing British American football, you go to another country like Germany, Spain, you're on a contract and you play. You know, you have neighbouring countries like Germany, which have the ELF, the GFL, and those players, the native players, much less the imported players, are on contracts. And we've got examples of that, of players that are playing over there. So I can straight away see a challenge. If I'm one of those players that's playing in Germany, and then I get called up to play for the national team, and then I have to pay to play for the national team, I've got a problem there. I really have a problem. So there's a finance problem that program has. It's a finance problem that Jason has. If Jason wants to get ones in the win column being in the best position to do that, he's going to need finance or from some form of support to do that. Now I'm going to come back onto you on this, Scott, because we know that BAFA have been awarded funding, which is absolutely brilliant. Absolutely. When have you ever heard, honestly, in the last 10 years, let's just say 10 years, publicly, that BAFA have won funding collectively of,
I don't think I've ever.
Never.
£750,000 going towards British American football is absolutely brilliant. They got £250,000 from Sport England, and then thereafter they got 500,000 from UK Sport, which is great. But there is a question on my mind, and quite a few people's minds that's actually in the British American football community, is how is that money divvied up? Now, from the last conversation that I had with Scott, it didn't seem like he was getting any funding to help him do that, to help him put ones in the win column. I need to position this question to you now, Scott, because the way I look at it is that the under-19s, or correct me, keep me honest here, is the under-19s program a feeder to the men's team?
It should be, but there's no established pathway. There's nothing that's been developed over the years to facilitate that. So we have had players go up and be part of the men's squads, but there's never been an actual pathway or a particular communication between the programs.
So are you saying that the programs are operating in silos?
Very much so, yeah.
Oh.
Very much so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. To talk us through, how, if that's the, right, I can only assume, and like I said, keep me honest here, if the men's team are financially struggling to support the talented players that can't afford to play, if they're doing that, what's the situation with under-19s then?
Right. Well, it's a huge challenge. I mean, we operate on that principle of what I would like as the head coach of that program is to have the very best players in the country. Well, the very best players that are eligible to play. Now, obviously, we don't have the same struggles that the men's team have in terms of players playing abroad, because there's very few sort of, under-19s that are playing abroad. So we don't have that particular problem. The problem we have, of course, is the cost it costs the players to come to camps and that, because we charge a registration fee. BAFA charge a registration fee because we have to have venues, and that costs generally. We've been very lucky at the under-19s to have a few very friendly, player-friendly universities have offered facilities for free. So we try and do that. Right. The problem sometimes with that is they're not always in the easiest to reach locations for all of our players, and we're spread across the country. I mean, we really are. We have players from Inverness in Scotland. We've got some really good players from the program that's run up there, Highland Wildcats, who are a very well run program, but they're very much isolated up in the far north of Scotland. Mm-hmm. We have players based in Cornwall and sort of Bristol and Dorset and things like that. So we literally draw our squad from the whole of the country, whole of the nation, and it is a struggle financially because not all of our kids, in fact, a large proportion of our kids come from backgrounds where they can't easily spend 50 quid on a train ticket to Manchester, let's say, if we have a practice, if they're from London. They just financially they can't do that, and they don't have that that family support that's going to be able to say, oh yeah, that's fine, I'm free on that day, I'm going to drive all the way up to Manchester, wait for you to practice all day, and then drive you back. We just don't. I mean, even back in our day, there were players who, young players who couldn't sort of do all that. You know what I mean? You just can't do it, and I think it's a huge challenge to these kids, and it makes me quite upset because if we've got, like, let's say we've got the best quarterback in the country, but he's in London sort of thing, but he has some difficulties. He can't, he doesn't have the finances to travel up to Manchester, Leeds, wherever it might be. How do we work that so that player can be part of the squad? Because physically and sort of like player wise, he should be on the squad because let's say he's the best quarterback and he's QB1 for us. If we can't get him to practices, so he can't get the reps, how do we balance that up, And in the past, we've been really lucky. I mean, I've got a great team manager at under-19s, really great, and she really cares about the program and the players. and we have found ways to help players in that sort of situation. But that's not something we can do for everybody. We just can't. So it does sadden me because
So I want to be really candid here.
Fine.
Are we talking about financial help to help these kids to get to practice and
Yes, I mean, it's being able to provide, to say to someone, if a train ticket costs £40, right? Yeah, we'll find a way to cover that between us. You know what I mean? And that's it's taken the forms of even like sort of she won't mind me saying this, I'm sure, but Rav has got her eldest son to sort of say, right, you're sponsoring a player to do this. You know what I mean? So when we went to Italy or something, they'd be like, yeah, you're sponsoring this player. So, and it's like, oh, am I? Okay, sort of thing. And they would do it. And that's the way. But we're literally, it's using a Band-Aid to patch up a sort of a leaking sort of water tower or something. It's that kind of thing. So we've tried to do that in certain cases, but we can't always do that. We just don't. There's just not. Ideal world, we'd have a major sponsor would come in and say, hey, you're running a really great program here. We like the fact that we've got all these kids playing. Hey, we'll come in and we're what's your challenges? What are your number one challenges? What's the financial challenges you've got around running this program?
So you're not being approached then with anything like that?
No, we are running everything. You mentioned it earlier about silos, right? We're running that almost in isolation of everything else. Okay, we are not getting helped financially. We are not getting that help or that support. We're not, and it's. I don't understand how we can run a BAFA program for the future. And this is the thing that gets me. We're not, I don't have 30-year-olds on our squad. I don't have 35-year-olds on our squad. Everyone in our squad is 19 and under. Okay. This is the future. If you've got any kind of plan, be it a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, the players we've got are the future, and not just us, but the under-17 squad as well. They're the players that in 5 and 10 years' time are going to form the backbone of any kind of contact football core. So if you want to be competing with the likes of Germany, Austria, France, why wouldn't we invest in these young men? Why wouldn't we invest in them, and make it doable for them to come to practices, to travel to games. It's just kids just can't afford it all the time. They can't. And as a head coach, I'm on a purely football level. I need those players at practice. I can't have them at half the practices because we need our team. If we're going to be any good as a program that practices once every 4 or 5 weeks, we have to make sure that every practice we have has everyone we need to be there and to be practicing, just to get that synergy and get that sort of reps going.
How big is your squad?
We have expanded it a little bit because we always carry a large a wider squad. Okay. Because we know those challenges. If like say for example, let's say for instance, we have 8 quarterbacks on our wider roster at the moment. Okay, now that's a mixture of kids who are going to age out this year because it's their last year eligible, and younger players, right, who we are looking at for the next couple of years, right? So we have 8 quarterbacks now. On any given practice, depending on where it is, we might have, let's say, 1 quarterback's injured. Okay, he's dislocated shoulder or whatever he might do. 2 players can't make it because they've got other commitments. 1 player can't afford it to get to wherever the practice is. That leaves us down to 4 quarterbacks or something, right? Okay. However, on the morning, one of those might find that his train's cancelled or something, which is exactly what's happened yesterday because we had a practice yesterday in Bristol. Players, their trains were cancelled, and that suddenly leaves us with 3 quarterbacks to facilitate a practice. So we carry over 100. We've got 120 plus on our squad at the moment. Okay, we have had fantastic practices this year. The buy-in from the players and the coaches, because they're doing an awful lot of great work in the background, has been great. I can't fault it at all. It's been fantastic. There's been a great atmosphere. There's been great buy-in from the players. But for me, I still think we're not doing what we can.
And I want to come to that because we talked about that in our first conversation. And I can only assume some of that is the repercussions of you doing a controlled scrummage with NFL Academy.
Yes, right, yeah.
But I just want to give Pete Ackley. I want to give Pete Ackley his flowers. Now, Pete Ackley was the previous CEO for BAFA, and his team. When he picked up the reins for the role, You know, there was a lot of work that needed to be done how can I say, he did a lot of work in the background to make sure that these guys couldn't apply for funding because there was a lot of prerequisites that weren't ticked, and him and his team got that done. So that first 250,000, I'd like to give Pete his flowers for that because a lot of the work that he did came off the back of his back, you know. And then obviously Chad came in, and then they got the 500,000 there as well. So you know, I want to give those guys a shout out because those guys drove that money for British American football. However, we all know that there's 5 pillars of American football in this country. Mm-hmm. There's university football, which is by themselves, which is Bucks. They got the finance, they've got their infrastructure right. They're cool. You've got men's, you've got women's, you've got flag, and you've got wheelchair. Okay, we all know that flag is a new kid on the block. Even though that we were playing a version of flag back in the day in the late 80s. Yep. Yeah, so it's always been here in some form or fashion. But because of the announcement of the Olympics, you know, everyone around the globe started to lean into flag football. Okay, and you know, GB are no different. I'm seeing and hearing coaches that are flocking to flag football now, and players are, and I get it. I understand why they're doing it. Is there a big reflection on this money that BAFA's got that's going to be, you know, funding the flag football? Yeah, I don't know. I can only say from my feedback from Jason at that point, no. You're giving me a no. And I'm talking about the under-19s Great Britain program and the men's. I don't know about the women's, but I'm pretty sure there is a percentage or a high percentage of that's going to be going to flag. And what we also got to consider is this. Is £750,000 a lot of money? To one person, to one team, maybe. But when you're thinking about across all of the pillars, you know, is it enough for one season? Is that funding for one season? Is that funding for 2 or 3 seasons? You don't know. Do you feel me?
I do.
But the bottom line is, you're saying to me that you're not getting anything from that money for the future of British American football, period. And then this is excluding flag, by the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's absolutely what I'm saying. We know that we're not getting anything. In fact, we've had a sort of any budget we did have was scaled back, so we don't get anything. And
so your budget's been scaled back?
We don't have nothing. Our budget is zero budget.
Where does the money come from?
It's self-funded by the players and coaches in this program. Players obviously pay to come to practice. Okay, we have to do that. Right?
That's the culture. I mean, the men's are doing the same thing. We haven't had anyone from the women's team on our platform for someone to feed back to us on that, but
crazy.
That's
crazy. I mean, the coaches, whilst they don't pay to come to practice, they don't get any expenses or anything. So if you're a coach, we've got a couple of coaches based in Scotland. They were down at Bristol yesterday, sort of thing. So that's a drive that they did. It's a long drive. You know, to get down to Bristol, do a whole day of practice, you know, classroom and on-field stuff, and then drive back straight away back up to Glasgow. And there's nothing there. There is nothing. We've been told there is nothing there for us. So everything we do that's why we're so sort of keen to get venues which are either free or at very low cost for us, because for example, we had a venue planned out for our March practice, which is only in 3 weeks' time, March the 1st, okay? However, that venue then backtracked on what they said, and they now want to charge us £136.20 per hour to use their 4G field, okay? So that, you know, my maths isn't great, all right, but that's a fair whack of money sort of thing. You get players paying, you know, whatever they pay, I think it's £17.50 per practice. And also we pay for medical cover we have to pay for, you know, and things, you know, that's a reality of it. So what we've got to do, we've almost got to run this like a business, as in our isolation, as an under-19 program, to say, right, we've got 100 kids coming to practice. if they're paying, £10 each, it's £1,000, whatever it is, you know what I mean, right? We,
so
we have to balance that up and say, right, we've saved this much money because the venue was free, luckily, so it's a balancing act. But as I see it is, we are a BAFA program, right? We are an under-19 national representative program, okay? We are what is out there, if we go and play another country like we did, in France in late 2023, we went out to Dublin as part of the global football tournament last August. It was a great trip, and we had 2 trips last year. We went to play a club team in Paderborn in Germany, and we played in Ireland as part of the global football tournament. Great experiences, both of them. Okay, absolutely fantastic experience. I think every kid that went on those trips absolutely had the best time, because we also got to see the Georgia Tech and Florida State game,
Right.
the Dublin game they have, and we were right down at the front. It was amazing. It was a fantastic trip, and I think those kind of memories that you can make for those young players,
They won't forget them.
no, absolutely not. And the bonding that these guys have from 3 days, I think we were out there, and it's amazing. And I see that, and I think that we can do that now with a little bit of help. We can make that happen for everyone on the squad, not just the players that can afford to go.
Scott, what does the under-19s program have to do in order to get the attention of BAFA to get funding? What do you have to do? Have you got 10-0 for the season? I mean, what do you have to do? Have you been told? Are there metrics that you have to provide?
No.
What do you have to do?
I think that sort of leads into a bit of frustration.
It is frustrating. Because this is the future.
This is what I can't get right in my head about all this. Is the frustration comes from the fact that I believe we're doing great things as a program. I honestly think that, and I genuinely think that. I genuinely believe that what we've done.
Can you say that honestly? If I had Chad sitting here beside me right now.
Yeah.
Do you have the metrics to say, you know what, this is a successful program?
100%. 100%. Hutch, one of the things I will say is, right, this isn't me bigging myself up, but we, in the 3 years we've been in charge. But
tell it like how it is, man.
But I believe, right, we hadn't won a competitive game, right, and admittedly there was the COVID break and that, but we didn't win a game as a GB under-19 national program for a period, I think it was 7 years or something like that, because there was, we just didn't win a competitive game, okay, and we hadn't won a tournament game for even longer. I think the last win came with Damien Anderson back in 2013 or 14 or something like that. So in 2022 we went out to Bologna, okay, we had a tournament featuring Finland, Italy, the hosts, and Spain. Okay, we were drawn against Finland in the first game. Okay, Finland have been playing. We know the Finns. We know they play. They run very good programs, very well run. We had a plan going into that game, right, and it was sort of like to limit what we give. Make them play the field. Whole thing. I'm not going to go into it all, but basically we held Finland to. We lost the game 22-11. Okay, right. An 11-point loss, right, on our first outing for a number of years, okay, because of COVID, and we beat Spain in our second game. But I was more proud of the fact we played Finland so tough, because on paper, they should be beating us like 40 zip, right? We balled out. The players balled out. The coaches executed the plan. We did exactly what we wanted. I was so proud of our team and our coaching staff, because, that to me, and I can point to a continual improvement to our programme over the last 3.5 years.
Right.
It has been, and I think what annoys me a little bit in some of the things that have gone on is no one's come to me or to, the coaching staff or the parents of players that have been through the programme. Some of the best feedback I get is from parents of players who say, hey, you know what, so-and-so, he came to you, who's not that confident, and that he spent 2 years in our programme. Now he's absolutely, crazy about football. He's going off to do this. He's weight training. He's doing this. He's doing all the right things because he's been empowered in our program. Because we've made that.
Repercussions of the program.
Yes, and I can point to that. But the thing that I guess frustrates me most is no one's coming to see it. We haven't had any BAFA people to any of our practices, right, over the last 2 years, right? Okay, never come to our practices.
Talk to you or nothing.
No, we haven't had that. No, we haven't had that conversation. And I think my biggest thing is I think people, Chad maybe is listening to people who maybe who haven't been around our program, so can't give him a real feel of our program.
He shouldn't be listening to anyone. He should be coming to each program and listening to them and making.
Yeah, and that's disappointing for me, because I think you go out there and if you want to find out about what's going on with these programs, you don't go to someone who hasn't got anything to do with those programs or is on the outside looking in. Talk to people in the program. You know, if you don't want to talk to me, talk to my coaches, talk to the team manager, talk to people who, you know, whose kids have been through the program. We've had such great feedback from all the players that have been through the program in the last few years. Such great feedback, and I worry that that's getting lost.
So where do those players go? I'm a bit worried for time. We're going to have to wrap up soon, but what's the pathway for those kids now? They hit 19, you know, you get the great feedback, etc. But what's their pathway from there? Scott?
I don't think there is not a structure to anything, right? So some of them go
that's
off.
a problem.
Yes,
in itself.
yes. There's a massive drop off of players who play under 19 football, and then don't do anything else. You know what I mean? They just don't do anything else. They maybe go off and play uni ball sort of thing and stuff, which is great, because that's improving.
That's a pathway.
But for a lot of the kids who maybe don't go to uni, there's not much out there. I mean, some of them don't feel like they can really go to senior
Are they
clubs.
going to adult football?
I think some do, but I think a lot of them don't, because I don't know. I'm sure there's a myriad of reasons, but also I think sometimes they maybe don't want to go to a club that's maybe not playing at the sort of level they feel they might want to be playing at. But also I think sometimes there's barriers to participation at some of the really big clubs like the Warriors, for example, and maybe up north of Manchester Titans. Because they've got experienced players there. I mean, if you go to for example, if you go down to the Warriors and you're a young running back that's come through an under-19 program, okay, you go to the running backs, you go there. You've got Andy Owusu, you've got all those guys who have that's an intimidating group.
Okay, I got to stop you there.
I know.
The reason I got to stop you there, Scott, is because if it was Scott Rowe, 18, 19, going to the Olympians, you were going there to learn. You were going there to be fourth string, third string, and work your arse up that depth chart.
No, that's true.
So
That's true. I think
some of this is about mentality as well.
Yeah, you're right. And I was fearless when I was an 18-year-old and I went to Olympics. I didn't fear anything because I knew I could play. And I was a little nervous about, sort of the contact, because obviously much bigger, stronger people. But I had no doubt of my abilities as a cornerback to play at that level. I had no doubt ever. I never had any doubt.
So
about
that is definitely about the player as well.
Yeah.
But the opportunity is there to go to these teams, but it's about the individual. I want to lean in, man, because we're running out of time. I want to lean into the NFL Academy.
Yes.
And the scrummage there.
Yeah.
And we were screwing because we were supposed to go up there. We were invited by Steve Hagan.
Well, it was like a hurricane, wasn't it? It was a storm that weekend as
it
well.
It was forecasted to be some big ass storm.
We didn't think we'd get a team up there. We didn't think our players would come. We got 58 guys up there.
Tell us
we
about
did
it,
not.
man.
We did not think they'd make it.
Tell us about that practice. Tell us about the outcomes. Tell us about the outcomes.
So, in brief, we had 80% of our players, were players that weren't in the program already, because we opened it up to obviously our existing squad, our squad of players who were graduating this year, so they've gone from our cycle now. But and then we had to open it up to players who we'd scouted from the regional series of games that that BAFA did, and also players who submitted film, got in touch with me. So we had such a mishmash of players, and we didn't know what we were going to get because we'd never practiced with 80% of these players before. So we don't know what we're getting from them.
Yeah, but I guess it's a controlled scrummage, though.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a good. It was a joint practice.
Yeah.
Into a controlled scrimmage sort of thing. So we had, and controlled scrimmages are much better for us as a program because they're not games. We're not, they're not pounding down the field on us because their talent level is amazing. They have guys. They're practicing every day. They've got great talent. They've got great coaches. They've got everything you need. Yeah. We have to know where we are in relation to them. That's what we stressed to the players. Was very much don't look at this as in like they went and scored that and they ran down the field on us. We knew that was going to happen, right? Because of the way and the efficiency that they run things at the NFL Academy, because they know what they're doing. They're running it every day. They know that. We know we're not going to get out there and but win your one-on-ones, win your one-on-one battle. You know what I mean? If you're at the end, win that battle with the tackle. Hold your ground. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, maintain that gap. You know, all those kind
Get
of
off the
things.
line,
We
you know.
stretched. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you know, that's what we stressed. That's what we did. We made sure that our players knew that the win for us wasn't going out there and competing with them as like, oh, they threw a touchdown pass.
Individual wins.
Yes, that's what we had to be. And as I said, I think I said this to you on the phone, that's been a real big win for us because we have got, and I think that's what's sort of kick-started what we've done this cycle. We've had 3 great practices since then. And I think the NFL scrimmage kick-started what we could do.
Ignited
It
what you
really
got.
did.
Yeah.
It really did. Because we could say to people, this is the level you want to get to.
Yeah,
You know, this is where you want to be.
Great. So, is there anything scheduled in the future to do that again with Steve Hayden?
It's left open. When we spoke afterwards, you know, it was very much like, hey, if you guys want to, you know, come again, well, we can do this again. I'd like to do it when we're a little bit further along in our cycle because then we'd be a little bit more. I mean, even right now, I think we'd be so much better, and the product we'd be able to put out there now, if we scrimmage them next week, we'd be a much better thing, and it would be a much better test for them. So it will be a much better kind of mutual benefit would be increased.
I kind of agree to disagree there. I think it's more of a benefit for under 19s because the benefit that they've got out of the first practice, you know, it's elevated them. It's given them more confidence.
Yeah.
They've seen what it's like, where they're supposed to be. You see what I mean? So they're working towards that.
Yeah, yeah.
At the NFL Academy, they're structured anyway, sort of thing.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the benefit for them, and I'll explain myself here. I think the benefit for them is that they get to practice against people that aren't them, right? Because you know it can be, you know, if you always practice, and I know the you know Coach Hagen's always looking for opponents to play and scrimmage against because he wants his guys to go up against different people, against different offenses. Because you know if they're going against each other in practice all the time, it's what it is, you know. And also,
you know their weaknesses.
Because NFL, NFL Academy, they don't have a league. They
no,
play
that's
specific
they've got to go out and
teams
find
in Europe.
opponents,
Yeah.
and that's what they've got to do. So you know.
Okay. So yeah, that's. Please keep us in the loop.
Yeah,
Because
no,
I'm sure
definitely.
that's going to happen again, and when it happens again, we don't want to miss that opportunity.
No, not
It's
this
not
time.
a second time. You know what I mean? Because we've been invited up to Loughborough a couple of times now. It's just the timing has been pretty.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know weather. Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, look, man, Scott, we're gonna have to wrap up now. But just before we go, we know today is a very special day for American football. It's the Super Bowl tonight, and I just want to, you know, get your feedback on what you think. I mean, I don't know if you still follow the NFL or not, but if you do, you know, who do you think is gonna win it? Think it's gonna be Kansas? Do you think it's gonna be Philly? What do you think, man?
I will tell you right now, I'm so torn, okay, because I don't particularly want the Chiefs to win again. Get a bit bored, to be honest with them. But Clive Palumbo is an Eagles fan, right? And I can't have him talking to me for a year about the
Football will go on.
yeah,
and
I
on
can't.
and on.
Right, so I'd have to if you had to, you know, bend my arm, I'd have to say Chiefs.
Yeah.
And
But come on though, but on paper though, I mean, when you're looking at the team, I don't know if you've been following it, but if you haven't,
I
but I mean,
have.
you have.
Yeah.
Talk to me, man. Who do you think's going to win, man?
I think Philly have a fight to them that are just. As much as I hate it because they're rivals, I'm a Cowboys fan, so you know, yeah, it's a sad year.
I'm a
But
Commanders fan.
well, there you go. You and Shola, yeah, I was with Shola yesterday.
Shola,
Yeah. I just think I like Saquon Barkley. I think Saquon Barkley's great. I followed Jalen Hurts in college, sort of thing, both at Alabama and at Oklahoma, and I just think I think they've probably got enough to do it. But the Chiefs always find a weird. I think it's a really close call. I think it's a really close call.
What do you reckon, B?
I was having this conversation with a guy at work yesterday because he's gonna, he's gonna watch it as well. I do like Saquon. I think that they're gonna have to shut him down in order for. But Kansas has got so many weapons, bro. I just think I don't. I'm thinking Kansas.
You thinking Kansas?
Yeah.
Kansas? You thinking Philly? I'm thinking Philly. The reason I'm thinking Philly
Yeah,
is
because
because of Saquon Barkley. He is a freak. He really is. You've literally got. If you're playing a spread, so you're playing 3 receivers, a tight end, and a back and a receiver in Philly's backfield.
Yeah.
You got two running backs back there. You got Jalen Hurts and you got Saquon.
Yep.
That can tote the rock.
Yeah.
Both
Well, without
of them
doubt.
can tote the rock. You've got designed plays for Jalen to run the rock. I'm not saying Patrick hasn't, but I think Jalen's the better runner.
Oh, yeah,
When you
definitely.
so when you're thinking about time management, right, they got to be thinking about time management. If you keep Mahomes off the field, he can't score points,
Yeah.
right? And
true.
I personally believe because of that 1-2 punch of Saquon and Jalen, you know, they've got what's his name again? They got Brown, AJ Brown,
Yeah.
Smith, and Dotson. Those guys are ballers too. I'm not saying that Kelsey and what's the guy that went to Hopkins,
Yeah.
wide receiver Hopkins. I'm not saying that Mahomes ain't got no targets. He has,
He's
but
got hella targets.
I think Philly managed the clock better, and if they can manage the clock, long ass drives, 8 minutes, 9 minutes drives, and get 6 points and keep Mahomes off the field, they stand a chance. You nailed it when you said Kansas finds ways to win, and that's what they're really good at. They find ways to win.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce, he only comes alive in the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? And he's going to be a factor in the game. But I'm going for Philly.
Yeah. We shall see.
So, B, it's about that time, bro. You know, it's that first time in the year, man. But it's about that time, man.
Starving.
Like, man, I can't wait for it, man. You know, I can't wait to eat. So, good rice, good meat, good God.
Let's eat.